So Gojo has some insane new hacks. One being an ability that's gotten lost in the hype of Gojo vs Sukuna finally taking off after so much buildup, even though it was shown right in front of our faces the whole time. Along with that, Gojo seems to have implied that he's also mastered an ability that's so rare that only a handful of characters in the entire series have managed to use it. All these reveals in a chapter where dialogue took a massive backseat to some insane fighting sequences and explosions. I'm talking some straight up Fast and Furious level over the top action here. I mean, at the top of the chapter, Gojo himself has said that he's gone under some kind of training, and we get to witness the fruits of this training firsthand in this very chapter. And the first visible instance of this is when Gojo seems to have learned magic out of nowhere and seems to now be able to manipulate large objects and fling them in whatever direction he chooses. I'm of course referring to the scene where Gojo lifts a section of bridge that Sukuna is standing on and proceeds to fling it towards a large building. To this point, we really haven't seen Gojo use any type of ability like this, managing to pretty much manipulate things at will and fling them around like he has some kind of telekinetic abilities or something, like he's some kind of Esper. Well, many in the JJK community have speculated as to whether or not this is a brand new ability altogether or a much more specialized version of abilities we've already seen. Now let's consider for a second that this is a brand new ability that Gojo has yet to use or even name to the audience. It would make sense that it would fall under his limitless technique, kind of the general barrier aspect of it, where it seems like Gojo possibly can manipulate the space around him to do things like levitate in the air like he did during the Sister School event in season 1 of the anime, and just generally seem to have the ability to float midair. This could be a much more advanced version of that, where Gojo does a similar thing to other objects. He makes the bridge float much like he can make himself float, and in theory, if he could also make it float, he can also repel it towards the other building like he did. But to be honest, with the current information that we have right now, it doesn't seem very likely that this is the case, and if it is, we definitely need some more elaboration on it to feel pretty confident with that theory. You also have to consider that the invisible barrier created by Limitless can also be expanded, so Gojo's means of teleportation and floating could be a manipulation of this expanded limitless space. So an advanced form of using this barrier expansion might be manipulating the outer walls of this expansion in order to seemingly manipulate objects around it. So in simpler terms, Gojo might be using his limitless barrier expansion to push the bridge up with its outer walls and then push it towards the building, which would be a more complex version of what we originally would think his limitless barrier expansion would be normally, which is expanding from a center point being him in all directions, kind of like a sphere or a half sphere. And if you're not too confused at this point, I'd really appreciate you dropping a like and subscribing if you enjoyed JJK content, because I'll provide it for you here each and every week. Now the second option that I said, and the one that I currently subscribe to myself, is that this is a specialization or an extension of abilities that we've already seen Gojo use. More specifically is Hollow Technique Blue and possibly Red. And the way it would make sense that this is blue and possibly red is a little confusing, but I'll try to explain it as best as I can. As we all know, Hollow Technique Blue allows Gojo to create a magnetic force that attracts things together. We see this in the Hidden Inventory arc when he uses it on the, paper bag head guy. Totally forgot his name, but you know what I'm talking about, right? And he uses it to smash two of his clones together. Now, if Gojo's only using Hollow Technique Blue in this situation, this is kind of my way to explain it. When Gojo points his fingers up, he creates this magnetic force above the bridge that attracts it straight up. Immediately after this, after Gojo flings his arm towards the building, he creates another magnetic force that's connected to the building itself, attracting the piece of bridge towards the building automatically. This would be a pretty good roundabout way to explain why it seems like Gojo somehow was able to just straight up lift the bridge and throw it using what seemed to be telekinetic powers or something. Now, like I said, it is also possible that he's using blue in combination with red, because going over the exact same scenario, as soon as Gojo points his fingers up, he uses blue to attract the bridge in the magnetic pull he created directly above it, and then uses red to repel the bridge towards the building. Now, to confuse you guys even further, it is possible that he's exclusively only using red by repelling the bridge up and then repelling it towards the building. The main reason why I think it's much less likely that this is Curse Technique Reversal Red is the simple fact that every time Gojo has seemed to use this ability, it looks a lot like Hollow Purple in the sense that it's a visible projectile attack that starts in Gojo's hand and gets repelled to whatever his target is. So the big issue here, of course, is that we don't see this little sphere form in Gojo's hand that he would then use on the bridge in order to repel it towards the building. Also on top of that, red seems to be a really destructive force, so I feel like on contact with the bridge would pretty much just be obliterated. Again though, going back to how Gojo talked about going under some kind of special training, I wouldn't put it out of the realm of possibility that he learned how to mitigate the damage of red and also made it an invisible force that doesn't have to necessarily originate from his hand. All this is to say is that, it's looking very likely at this point that this isn't necessarily a brand new technique that Gojo is using, but an extension of his already existing ones. But what is a new technique that it seems that Gojo has learned that he didn't directly use in this chapter but actually implied at the very beginning is mastering the use of reverse cursed energy. Well, you're probably thinking to yourself right now, wait, he already knows how to use reverse curse technique. How is this a brand new ability, right? Well, you're right, he does know how to use it on himself. The first time he did so was actually during the hidden inventory arc in his fight against Toji. This is also when he unlocked curse technique reversal red. But it's also very, very important to note that it has yet to be seen that Gojo knows how to use it on others, meaning use his reverse curse technique to heal other people other than himself. At this point, the only known characters in the entire story that we've seen use reverse cursed energy to heal others are Okotsu, Shoko, and Sukuna. Shoko using it all the time in her medic role, Sukuna using it to heal Megumi just before fighting Maharaga, and Okotsu using it in two separate situations where he used it in JJK Volume 0 to heal Maki, Panda, and Inumaki, and another time much later in the main continuity of the manga that I'll actually explain in a little bit. And why I feel like Gojo subtly revealed that he's learned to master this technique and has learned the ability to heal others is in his statement referring to Megumi at the beginning of chapter 224, when he says, "Then why are you wearing that face? You wanted me to hold back, right? Too bad for you, I've undergone special training. I can totally wail on Megumi. Dying once as Yuji was a mistake. I'll worry about Megumi after I kill you." So really there's two things to unpack in that entire sequence. The first being that Gojo's undergone some kind of special training, which makes him feel a lot more confident in beating Megumi into a pulp without killing him, or at least killing him permanently, because he also mentions that dying once as Yuji was a mistake, referring to when Sukuna tore Yuji's heart out in order to kill him, and then later on healing his body again after they made a binding vow. While kind of dissecting what Gojo says here, his plan seems to be straight up killing Sukuna and by extension also killing Megumi, but the moment that Sukuna's soul has expelled from Megumi's body somehow, Gojo would use reverse curse technique to heal Megumi's deadly wounds and bring him back to life. We've actually seen something very similar to this happen already in the chapter where Okotsu straight up kills Yuji just for a moment and then uses reverse curse technique to heal his heart again. Now the only issue with this is that this spells way too much of a clean cut ending than what I'm assuming Gege is planning for. Like, I don't think it's very likely that Gojo's gonna just straight up defeat Sukuna, revive Megumi, and everything's gonna be okay. So it might be possible that Sukuna body hops again, Gojo heals Megumi, and the fight continues in some other way. Not really sure, but that's not the point of this video. The fact of the matter is that Gojo seems to have gone under some kind of special training that's allowed him to further hone his incredibly broken abilities that are going to become crucial in defeating Sukuna, or at the very least saving Megumi. But what do you guys think though? Do you think Gojo's ability to, lift and throw a building is a completely new ability that we haven't used yet and might get explained in the next chapter? Or do you think it's an expansion of his already existing abilities? Let me know. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts. Future me popping in here. Editor to the stars, Seth the Sin, actually pointed out to me that Gojo actually used some kind of telekinetic ability that's very similar to what he does in chapter 224 when he's first showing Yuji the concept of cursed energy. This is of course when he shoots cursed energy at a can and smashes it, and also uses a cursed technique in order to twist it. Now whether you think that this is using the same ability that Gojo was using in chapter 224 is debatable, but nonetheless they're very similar and they might be related, because we do see that he twists the can very much in the same fashion that he also twists up Juzo's limbs in season 1 of the anime. So who knows, maybe this is an ability that Gege is actually foreshadowed a few times throughout the story and might be gearing up to fully explain in the next chapter. That is it for today's video though guys. Have an absolutely wonderful night and I'll see you guys in the next video.